Hello and welcome to the Mejlis podcast, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's current affairs talk show focusing on Central Asia. I'm Bruce Pannier, host of the Mejlis and author of the Central Asia in Focus newsletter. November 25th was the start of the annual international campaign, 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. Increasing attention has been paid to gender-based violence in Central Asia. There's more reporting about it in local media. Politicians have spoken out against GBV, and new laws have been and continue to be passed to prevent gender-based violence and strengthen punishments for men who perpetrate it. But the problem continues to grow. Kyrgyzstan's Interior Ministry said in late November the number of incidents of gender-based violence from January to October this year was 37% higher than in the same period in 2023. GBV is increasing in other Central Asian countries as well. Even local organizations that work to prevent GBV and help women who are victims of it are under pressure. To discuss this, I am joined by Svetlana Dzardanova, human rights and corruption researcher at Freedom for Eurasia, currently located in Kyrgyzstan, and Niginakhon Saida, a researcher, educator, and freelance journalist from Uzbekistan specializing in Islam, education, and gender issues in Central Asia. And we hope we'll be joined soon by Khalida Azhigulova, a Kazakhstan-based lawyer and international consultant on prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. Svetlana, I'd like to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about GBV and what you've been seeing lately? And I know that you had some anecdotes that you wanted to tell us about too.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. Thank you for the invitation. Always honored and happy to be on your podcast. Yes, to continue of what you've been talking about already, for the first 10 months of 2024, we've seen more than 14,000 of domestic violence cases being registered. And you rightly mentioned it's 37% increase when compared to the same period in 2023. So the thing is that when we think of this horrifying number and we think, does it reflect the reality? Most probably not, because only portion of the cases get reported. And while NGOs, human rights defenders are concerned with the number, law enforcement state that this rise might be due to the working policies, the new policies, and the fact that people talk about the issue more openly now, that they are not afraid to address the issue to the police, to report the cases. And despite all these discussions, for the several years in a row now, Kyrgyzstan remains the most dangerous country of 5 Central Asian states, according to the Global Women's Safety and Well-being Index. And the fact can be viewed from different sides. We are, of course, concerned with the cases rising, but this can be also attributed to the fact that data is available more openly now for Kyrgyzstan. So it really depends on how we interpret the data. About the most recent cases, I will be talking about femicide cases in Kyrgyzstan. And for our listeners, femicide, we understand the femicide as a murder of women by men, motivated by hatred to women, contempt, pleasure, or sense of ownership of women. And the term was coined by Diana Russell, a professor, in 1976. Since then, the term included more characteristics of killing of women, but we will stick to this basic understanding of what femicide is. So very recently in Kyrgyzstan, the society has been again shaken by 2 horrifying cases of femicide. In one of the cases, 17-year-old Daria Popova was killed by her stepfather, the man whom his mother married, but consequently she and her daughter left the man because of his aggressive behavior. She took precocious steps to avoid this aggressive behavior, but the person did everything to follow the family, to stalk the family, and the whole story ended up tragically when he first kidnapped the girl and then killed her in an attempt to punish the woman for leaving him. In another case, just a month ago, on 15th of November, Aygirim Nurlanbekova died in a hospital after her husband stabbed her 20 times in their home with their kids present, sleeping in neighboring rooms. So the cases, again, while shaking the society and human rights defenders and NGOs, women's NGOs specifically, we don't see that much of an outcry from state officials. We don't see much of a reaction from our supposed allies. And that's exactly what is worrying in Kyrgyzstan, is that for the state, for the law enforcement, gender-based violence and specifically femicide is a blind spot, and it's not something of an interest and concern. However, later I will be talking about legislation, and we will see where we're going in this sphere.
Okay, thank you. Nigina, Svetlana was just talking about, that we'd mentioned that the rate of GBV has increased 37% over the first compared to the first 10 months of 2023. But in Uzbekistan, they don't really keep such accurate data at all, do they? I mean, it's very hard. You and Svetlana just co-authored an article with some other people, and you made it clear in your article that it was very difficult to actually get concrete figures on gender-based violence in Uzbekistan. Can you talk about that a little?
Thank you very much for the question and for inviting to the podcast, Bruce. Happy to be here. Indeed, so the thing I'm worried about, or we have been observing so far in Uzbekistan, is that gender-based violence issue or women's rights and the protection of women and girls became a very popular hot topic a couple of years ago. We started talking about basically in Uzbekistan about the violence against women or domestic violence, specifically starting from circa 2017, 2018, right? That's the period when we started developing several legislations, etc., right? And back that time, law enforcement agencies would monthly, if not weekly, would report how many reports did they receive from women, how many protection issues were given, protection orders were given to women, on what occasions, etc. Right? They were more or less punctual with it. But as time passed by, we lost the track of it. Right? Last time we had the full report, for the annual cases, was 2021. Right, for, the protection orders, for example, started being issued in late 19s, right? And from 2020, it started on a full scale. And then 2021 was the last time we had these annual numbers. And since then, we have fractions of it, right? So that already shows that the topic is losing its prominence. Yes, it is still one good side of it is probably after government initiated those efforts to pay more attention to gender-based violence, is that civil societies and especially journalists have picked up the topic and have been talking about it and paying attention to it, etc. But still, it wouldn't reflect the lack of overall effort from the government side. With legislation, as Svetlana was noting, there is another side of it, right? Uzbekistan has actually the most progressive laws in Central Asia, I believe, in regards to women's rights and protection of women against gender-based violence, violence against women and girls in general, right? For example, I don't think in any other Central Asian nations there is a legal definition for sexual extortion, victims of which most of the time are young girls and women. We have domestic violence, which is criminalized since last year. We have legal definitions of economic abuse, the physical abuse, psychological abuse, harassment, even stalking, right? So I'm not saying from legal perspective we have perfect legislations. Of course, there are gaps, imperfections, etc. But the more problem lies with implementation of it and how attention spent toward this GPV or protection of women is short-lived usually. And those topics are, again, they reserve when there is like special occasions such as 8th of March, like Women's Day, etc. So going back to your question once again, yes, we do not have exact numbers.
Can I continue a bit?
Yes, please.
Like talking about the legislation and issues with the legislation, as Nigina mentioned, it's true that like every country of Central Asia now says that they have maybe a most progressive legislation on the topic. And it's true, like we have really comparatively good laws on protection from domestic violence. I mean, it's true. And Kyrgyzstan was among the first, like the first law was in 2003. And then in 2017, we really made the progress. And the most recent amendment is compulsory correction program, which was tried out before, but only in target locations before this year. But the problem, as also Nigina mentioned, lies in many other cases in implementation and state attitude towards the issue. And we can talk not only about the legislation protecting women from domestic violence, but also if we look at the generally at the national strategy on gender equality. So the previous one ended in 2020, and for 2 consecutive years, the state couldn't get a new strategy and the national action plan. I mean, it really shows where the gender issues, where the gender equality lies in the view of the state. I mean, how state interested or is not interested in reaching gender equality or, and protecting women in the state. And also, if we look at the strategy and when we look at the national plan, both of them look great. But when we look at how much the state is about to spend on realization of this plan, gives us a very different picture. I mean, state is not into investing into gender equality. It's not into investing into protection. And why the correction program was not working before? Like it was in the legislation already in 2017, but it was implemented implemented because the program itself is expensive. You need resources. You need to finance the program. You also need human resources, and the state wouldn't invest in that. And what we see now is even now when the correction program becomes compulsory, it says the ministries now say that because they have no financial or administrative resources, like for the first, I don't know, maybe several months or years, international donors are supposed to finance the correction program. So this is just to add up about the legislation and how it works in the reality.
Let me ask you something, because I know they've been talking about the laws, tightening the laws in Kyrgyzstan, and they were saying, I can't remember, at least a year ago, they said that if someone files a complaint for domestic violence, then the state has to follow through on it, even if the person complaining withdraws their complaint, because this was always a problem, right? That there's the pressure to like not charge a husband, boyfriend, whatever, whoever he is, with the crime, and they were trying to get legislation through that said, as once the complaint's made, the prosecutor's office has to investigate this and look into it, whether the complaint is withdrawn or not. Did they ever pass that?
I haven't seen the specific norm in the new law. I just know that they pushed for the punishment of law enforcement if they don't react to the cases. But also the thing is that the Ministry of Internal Affairs says that they already have the norm in the law. The thing is that in the reality, it's really difficult to do something about it, like to really punish those who didn't react to the case. For instance, if you remember the 2021 case of Aizada Kanatbekova, when she was kidnapped and killed, and her relatives addressed the law enforcement and it didn't react. What happened in the end is just there was only administrative punishment for the police officers. And many of those people stayed in the structure. I mean, they continued to work in the law enforcement. So also the thing is that when we speak of stricter norms, like when people demand higher, more years for murder, for homicide, or for kidnapping of a woman, I don't really believe it works. I mean, the thing is that people, both perpetrators and law enforcement, they should know that the punishment will be there if they break the law. The thing is that we say that we increase a number of years of the punishment doesn't really play much of an effect here.
May I pick up from here?
Yes, please.
While we're discussing the punishing the perpetrators, that's the same issue that is the same in Uzbekistan. But I would like to draw probably the attention of how, for example, those cases, gender-based violence cases or violence against women and girls, is reviewed by the court system, right? Because the system itself still remains more or less not familiar with how to deal with gender issues. And many people who work in the sphere still operate on stereotypes, gender stereotypes. Recently, two scholars, Utkurbek Holmarzaev and Zaineddin Shamsuddinov from Tashkent State University of Law, they did a stunning research into how domestic violence cases are reviewed by the court system, judicial system in Uzbekistan. They literally viewed over 10,000 cases, which was dealt by the criminal court and administrative court of Uzbekistan, right? And the findings showed that in majority of cases, whether domestic violence case was filed due to severe abuses, right? Because in order to take it to criminal court, the level of injuries should be severe, right? But even in those cases, in the criminal courts, over or about like 50% of the cases are closed due to under the Article 63.1 of the Criminal Code, which allows women to close the case if they want to, right, throughout the process. And there is an exception, of course, like in aggravating circumstances, but I don't think anyone is checking if women are being forced to close the case or to take their claim back. The same situation is with administrative courts, where when women file against their husbands or whoever is there abusing them, right, on domestic violence, over 1/3 or more cases are closed due to insignificant nature of the case, right? So the judicial system is circumventing the laws in order not to punish the perpetrator. And this would only aggravate the perpetrator even further in the future cases. Recently, Svetlana and I worked, for example, in a femicide project, which included looking at court cases, not only because someone was killed, but those included attempted cases too. And one of the cases I vividly remember among those attempted murder cases, where a husband not only stabbed his father-in-law while attacking his wife with a knife, right? And in the court, that father-in-law came and said, like, I don't have a claim against my son-in-law please close the case, right? That already shows you, like, if father-in-law is pressured, saying after being stabbed with a knife, you can imagine through what women go when they are like pressured, forced to take their claims back. And when this impunity continues, there will not be any remedy. Like they will continue the violence against women and girls. Like they will continue seeing women as the part of their property and treating them as such further.
Okay, thank you. We're joined by Khalida Azhigulova. Khalida, we've been talking about the situation with gender-based violence, and we've heard about Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and then some of the legislation that they are talking about or have passed, and yet we still see increasing incidents of GBV out there. Could you tell us a little bit about the situation in Kazakhstan, please?
Yes, hello everyone. In Kazakhstan, we finally managed to pass the historical law, I would say, the Sultanate law, as we call it. Personally, I had been advocating for the law to criminalize violence, including domestic violence, for 4.5 years. And of course, unfortunately, after the notorious murder of Sultanate last year by her civil partner, finally we managed to push and got this political will. And due to this political will, on behalf of of the leadership of the country, finally the law was passed. And so the law was passed in mid-April this year. It's entered into force since mid-June. So it's been in force for almost 6 months. And I can say that indeed it plays a significant role in reducing the number of domestic incidents, because, some of the aggressors, some of the abusers, they were not afraid of any punishment, which was insignificant in the past. And that's why they enjoyed committing this violence, committing this abuse against their family members. But now, since abusers know that for any beating, for any assault, even minor assault, they will be held responsible and they will get a criminal punishment, this actually is a very good restraint measure, I would say. And according to the statistics that we receive, of course, we will be waiting for further statistics for the whole year. But so far, the Ministry of Interior, they have been reporting that indeed the number of cases reported to the police about domestic violence, they have decreased. The numbers have decreased. But on the other hand, we also face another side of the situation. Unfortunately, we do still come across incidents when police officers who come to the place, some of them, of course, they do their work very well, but some police officers, unfortunately, despite the training they receive from the Ministry of Interior, they continue failing to register such reports. They continue failing to give the protection orders or protection, I would say, documents to a survivor, so that the abuser would not be let approach her, and so on. But all these incidents, even when some police officers, when they fail to act in a proper professional manner, we have channels to report such mismanagement of cases by police officers. And also based after this law entered into force, we have a new department on combating domestic violence in the Ministry of Interior. And also we have, even before that, we have had departments in each police department, a specialized department to combat domestic violence. And so whenever I come across such incidents, I immediately report to designated police officers who deal specifically with domestic incidents, and they take such situations under control. So this actually helps to monitor the work of district police officers and make sure that every case would be registered, and every abuser they would receive their punishment.
Okay, thank you. And a reminder, we're talking about the problem of gender-based violence in Central Asia and what's being done to prevent it. And my guests are Niginakhon Saida, a researcher, educator, and freelance journalist from Uzbekistan, specializing in Islam education and gender issues in Central Asia. Khalida Azhigulova, a Kazakhstan-based lawyer and international consultant on the prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. Svetlana Dzardanova, human rights and corruption researcher at Freedom for Eurasia, currently based in Kyrgyzstan. Khalida, let me follow up a little bit with this. How much of a role do you think it played when they had when they televised the trial of the death of the murder of Sultanat Nukinova? Was that could we call that a watershed moment for Kazakhstan in some ways?
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. In Kazakhstan, in our history, this is the first case. The first case when when court proceedings were televised, and when actually every citizen in the country and also so many millions of viewers across the globe, they could actually watch, the proceedings in real time and then rewatch the recordings on YouTube. And I think it's really a breakthrough in our judicial system, and I fully support such novelty, because when the process is televised, when it is live streamed, it actually disciplines all participants of the process. It disciplines prosecutors, lawyers, the judge as well, because everyone knows that they will be recorded, and their behavior will be seen, their actions, they will be seen and maybe also assessed and judged by viewers. And of course, it means that everyone should prepare perfectly well. Everyone should come prepared. Everyone should know very well the law, the procedures, and so on. And I think it's this process actually, the other positive thing that I found in this televised process is that we actually saw quite a few powerful women in Kazakhstan. Because if you have noticed, and I think it was really remarkable, the judge, the leading prosecutor, the leading barristers in the case, they were all women. And I believe this is a very good example of women's empowerment. It's a very good example of powerful women, that we actually do have such powerful women in Kazakhstan, in Central Asia. And it's a very good example for the younger generation of girls, especially those girls, young women who live in patriarchal societies, who are told that you should always obey your father, your husband. You should always be, inferior to your husband. And for such girls, I believe this is really a life-changing experience. It could be a life-changing experience, because right now every girl, she knows that she can actually also become a barrister. She can, if she does well at school, she can actually get enrolled in a law school, graduate with merits, and then proceed with her career, as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, as a judge. So everything is possible. So from this point of view, I fully commend this process. I fully commend that it was televised, it was recorded, and is currently available on YouTube. And I really hope that our Supreme Court, it will continue such practice, and we will see more cases, court cases like that televised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Svetlana, let me ask you real quick too. There was a horrific case there's been obviously many, but in Kyrgyzstan there was a horrific case earlier this year, right, where the Asel Nogabayeva, I believe her name was, she was assaulted by her ex-husband, who also mutilated her. Did that resonate? Is it still resonating in Kyrgyzstan?
Yes, exactly. But I think it was last year, the case of last year.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, last year. I'm sorry.
Yeah, time flies so fast. Yeah, exactly. As already Nigina said, the lifespan of interest over the issue of GBV and femicide is really short in the society, and it's happening also because our society continues to normalize, approve, and excuse violence against women. And for that, we have supporting evidence, supporting research evidence. For instance, last year, there is a mix, it's called mixed survey, multiple indicator cluster survey. So among many other questions, they asked women about when they would approve of a husband or a boyfriend violence towards them. Like what would be the reasons for them to approve the violence towards them from their male partners? And 19% of women age 49 said that they can be hit by a man because she either failed to take care of the kids, she quarreled with the man, she left the house without telling the man, she didn't cook a proper meal, or she refused to have a sexual intercourse with the person. 19% is a big percent of women approving of such behavior. But the positive thing here is that 10 years earlier, in 2014, 32% of women would approve of such behavior. So it's gradually changing. But as I just mentioned, the two recent horrific cases of femicide, like in November and December this year, the Klub media reported the cases and they made an Instagram post about the two cases. And I went reading through the comments to the post, and it was disappointing, but also very informative, because in many cases, people try to excuse perpetrators' behavior. Like they would say that it was either because of the feelings, emotions, love, jealousy. They would try to explain and reason that women need to understand male psychology. They need to understand that they should be fully aware of how they behave with men, not to kind of inflict this behavior on them. So they were the commenters to the post, they would be putting the blame either fully or partially on the victim. And one of the comments read that this is due to lack of understanding of male psychology. When men love, they get jealous, because it really shows the level of their feelings. So women need to understand that playing games with man's feelings can lead to these negative consequences, like negative consequences for them being killed by a man. So it's interesting how such comments would really correspond and to the recent research that we were doing with Nigina in Uzbekistan, because when going and reading through multiple news pieces, we also see the same kind of excusing perpetrators' attitudes in how media reports the cases. So it's either they excuse the perpetrator, or they blame the victim, or they try to kind of show the perpetrator as someone abnormal, like saying that this person is not a man but an animal, or a beast, like using these dehumanizing words and calling them different names, and showing that these are not normal men, but something very different, and something very also visible. So also putting part of the blame on the victims, because the victims should have known this before, because they were choosing their partners. So for me, what's important is that as activists, as researchers, as NGO workers, and also as journalists, we need to try to kind of shift the attitudes so the society is less excusing and is more about the responsibility of perpetrators, of law enforcement, and of the state.
Okay, thank you. Nigina, we've mentioned these cases in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, which generated huge public interest and might and hopefully have helped and appear to have helped in some cases to do something about GBV. I don't remember a single specific case about that in Uzbekistan, but like Khalida mentioned, there have been women that were empowered, that were participating in this trial process, that played major roles in it too. Now, you have in Uzbekistan, there's two of probably the strongest women, in the leading positions in the country who have spoken out about that, but it doesn't seem to be making much progress. I'm talking about, of course, the president's daughter, Saida, and also the head of the parliament, Tanzila Narbayeva. They condemn these violence when there's reports about it, and yet it seems to fade away. Not long after they condemn it, they don't follow through on it. Do you get that impression? And what do you think is keeping Uzbekistan from galvanizing around this issue more than it has so far?
Thank you for the question. The problem still remains not the attention itself that the people in power are giving to. It's just those attentions are short-lived, unfortunately, right? And partially, I think that's because there aren't enough people in the power or in the system who understand the problem properly, right? For example, in the research I talked about, like domestic violence cases, right? Although like throughout Uzbekistan, 13% of judges are women, domestic violence cases are mostly reviewed by men. Only 4% of all these 10,000 domestic violence cases reviewed by judges, only 4% were females. And I already talked about, right, how judges or other people in the system have this patriarchal attitude and stereotypes about gender roles. And even in court documents, they refer to women not as an individual or as a citizen, but as a wife or as a mother. So you can observe how implementation is hard and how there is not much effort put into it. It's very easy to say everything in paper, saying that, okay, we have a law and we have everything, but implementation is very flawed. I wouldn't say that all those laws or all those efforts are useless, because there are progress, of course, right? But more things actually could be done.
Okay, thank you. Khalida, I want to ask about organizations that are there to support women in crisis centers, whatever. In Kazakhstan, it's strange. They've run into some problems lately. I'm talking about Nemolchi, one, but also Feminita recently, and admittedly, I think they were singled out by some deputies in parliament for promoting LGBT rights. But all the same, there were deputies in the Kazakh parliament that said that feminist groups should be equated with extremist groups. We've heard this in Kyrgyzstan too, but I'm curious your thoughts about that.
Yes, I find this as a very alerting development in Kazakhstan, and I think that some men with patriarchal conservative views, they intentionally politicize feminism. They intentionally politicize feminist groups, feminist movements, or any organizations and even personalities that promote women's empowerment and gender equality and so on. And of course, this is very alarming. And unfortunately, we do see that a few quite vocal female feminists, female human rights activists, they have been, in my view, this what they face right now may amount even to political persecution. And we know that the leader of the Nemolchi Foundation, since last year, she has been under criminal investigation personally, and of course she had to seek asylum in another country, and so basically right now she's in exile, and she's in another third country seeking asylum there. And with Feminita, of course, all such demands by members of parliament to declare Feminita as an extremist organization, in my view, this could also be seen as a form of political persecution. But of course, at the end, the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan said that they would not be doing this, that they would not be declaring Feminita as an extremist or terrorist organization. But nonetheless, this we should understand that this is an act of intimidation. This is an act to incite fear, to to scare, all these human rights activists. And of course, I think this does not do any good for the regime. And actually, all such claims or demands by members of parliament, they actually tarnish the reputation of the regime, because in a truly democratic and truly, in my view, in a state that runs according to the rule of law, which is governed by the rule of law, such actions not permissible, in my view. Yes, and I see them as absolutely inappropriate and inappropriate and appalling.
Thank you. Nigina, there's Nemolchi in Uzbekistan too. And Irina Matvienko isn't on the program right now, but I know that, in the past when she's posted stuff, she's encountered, I suppose what they call online bullying. But she's gotten threats, she's gotten, nasty comments and stuff. Is this common problem for organizations in Uzbekistan that are trying to champion the rights of women and help prevent gender-based violence? And what organizations are out there that are doing this besides Nemolchi.uz?
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer for that question, Bruce, actually. Yes, I know that Irina had encountered too many online bullying and harassment for the work she does, and so was other women's rights advocates, like including Dilfuza Kuralova, for example, for her interviews a couple of years ago, tons of trolls accusing her. One of the underlying problems or issues with that is how public or how many men actually give it the religious tone, saying that feminism is against our religion, women's rights is given within Islam, we Muslims have all the rights, and feminism is out there to actually break up families or to break family institution. I personally think there is also element of dependency on men, right? Because one of the trends I have been observing in Uzbekistan is early marriage, right? If you look at statistics of the couple of past years, 1/3 of all the brides in Uzbekistan are at the age of 18 and 19. They don't even reach 20. They are married off. And when they get married, they do not have proper education, right? And 40% of girls who were interviewed actually reported that they did not continue their studies because of the objection from either from their husband's side or other in-laws, right? So they are completely dependent on their husbands in terms of finances, in terms of social status, not only husbands, then there are also other in-laws as well, right? So when women enter into the relationship from the dependent situation, right, they cannot do anything. Their education, their careers are ceased for at least 10 years until they have a couple of children. They get empowered through media, through the projects such as Nemolchi.uz, or the social advertisements or the different programs, mostly funded by international organizations, etc. But that would not be much of help usually. That's why women keep taking their claims back from police, from the judicial systems, etc. So, and I do not think, yes, there are projects such as Nemolchi.uz and Rahmdillik Center or the Nur Center, etc., who would shelter, for example, women who are escaping domestic abuse or domestic violence. But comparatively, they are very small in number. Government established shelters, for example, do not offer much. I'm not sure if they are still working, by the way. I'm very much sure that they cannot accommodate women, or especially women with disabilities, right? There aren't such organizations that would actually provide tangible help. There are some small NGOs that would that would offer psychological support. There are some that provide us lawyers, so they could so women could apply for divorce or for alimony, for child support, and those cases. But those organizations, NGOs or civil society organizations, are very limited in number, and they are also very much limited in their actions because of the shortage of funding. Right. And because there aren't stable, proper funding, they have to apply to different international organizations through different projects. Sometimes those could be irrelevant to their topic. And that also means that some organizations or some NGOs could apply, while they do not specialize in dealing with gender issues, if there is a grant, they would apply to them too, because they are underfunded. They are constantly underfunded. And those creates further issues, like leaving women totally up to themselves, right? The call centers is a good example. They kind of operated, or they existed, let's say. They existed while international organizations funded them. Call center for women who, which claimed that they would answer the calls of women when they are escaping the domestic violence. Irina Matvienko, like you said, she and her colleagues, I believe, they did a test and they could never reach actually the call center. And that call center specifically is set up and then ceases operating. And then after some time, whenever there is a fund, they start working again, and then it ceases operating. And that has been repeated a couple of times already. So I guess those anecdotal evidences show how inconsistent is the support that is offered to women.
Okay, thank you. Svetlana, I want to, same topic. Although again, I'll mention that it was still just a few years ago that they had, I can't remember his name, but he was a celebrity in Kyrgyzstan. And he had also said something to the effect of, feminist and women's rights groups should be declared extremist. I know that no organization is allowed to work as freely as it did, prior to the arrival of power of Sadr Japarov and his friends in Kyrgyzstan. But what organizations to help women are still active in Kyrgyzstan?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, in Kyrgyzstan, we have between 18-20 crisis centers that work with women at risk and victims of domestic violence. And they are usually not attacked by the state, but because they partially do the work of the state. I mean, we have only one or two state-supported crisis centers. And I wanted to mention the thing that as you mentioned, the aggressive attitude from men in power towards women protecting their own rights. As you maybe know, just recently we had elections to local councils, and a historic result of 42% of total number of elected deputies were women. I mean, it's incredible number. And just as the news surfaced, we seen kind of a reaction from men in power, specifically from Parliament Speaker Nurlan Shakiyev, who is very much concerned that women are taking up men's rights. He said that quotes should not be there. It should be based on something else, on qualities and stuff like that. And imagine it's not 80%, it's not 70%, it's 42% of women taking up positions as local councils at local councils. I mean, there is no threat to men, and the parliament is men in parliament are very vocal, expressing their concerns. Violence against women, femicide, domestic violence never gets this much attention from men in power in Kyrgyzstan. Never ever I have seen male parliamentarians saying anything up to this, this emotionally protecting women. Also, I remember unlike Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, we don't have such specific projects like Nimolchi KZ, Nimolchi Uz, but we have individual human rights and women's rights defenders and activists, and they have been attacked. You remember the case of Altyn Kapalova, who has been attacked not only by the public, but also by the state when she tried to give her own name, like matronymic to her children. So she also receives threats. The whole country's legislation has been changed just not to allow women their rights. So the overall situation is kind of aggressive towards women. Men in the place, they do understand this, that they very much aware of their impunity. They understand that majority of the president's administration, majority of the parliament are men. These are the same men that commit these crimes. They support their fellow men. So violence against women, femicide, it's not women's problem, it's male's problem. It should be addressed by them as well. I mean, we need more and more male allies to address the issue. We need male allies in the power, in the government positions to address this.
Okay, thank you. And apologies, we're starting to run short of time, but I want to let you all get in your last comment. So I'd like you to think, before the next international campaign for 16 days of activism against gender-based violence comes around, what is the next step, the first next step that you would like to see taken in your countries to prevent gender-based violence there? And Svetlana, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Not to be too positive, to see the changes, we not only need the right legislation in place, we need effort by the state to implement this, to oversee the process, to monitor the progress, to document, to analyze, to implement data-driven policies and interventions. And for that, they should be open to work with civil society, with international organizations that come with expertise, that come with finances and support, and just be open to the changes and be open to protect 50% of their own population.
Okay, great. Thank you. Khalida?
In Kazakhstan, I was personally inspired by this achievement that we finally managed to make this law passed, the law against violence. And now I continue my advocacy efforts. And my next steps will be to criminalize other types of gender-based violence, such as stalking, sexualized harassment, kidnapping of brides, or forcible marriages, as well as early marriages. And this is the area where I'm working now. And again, I get in touch with parliamentarians, and I hope that these other types of gender-based violence will be also criminalized in the next year, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Nigina, I'm going to let you have the final word then.
Thank you very much. I agree with the colleagues, and I think there should be in Uzbekistan specifically more emphasis on not additional laws, but implementations of it, right? And that implementation should include training of the people who work with gender issues, including the judicial system, the police, the Mahalla institution, who often forces women for reconciliation rather than leaving the abuser, right? And also, I believe there should be programs that would involve educating men on how gender-based violence or violence against women and girls are bad not only for women but for themselves too, right? It has multi-layered effect actually for the whole society in general, right? So those efforts or protection of women should not lie on the shoulders of women themselves. Men should also get involved, and men should also be educated. And so far, I have seen only one project that is realized by one international organization that focused on involving men in reducing gender-based violence in Uzbekistan, and that was the only case I know so far. So, and the claim that there is no enough budget, I think, is not substantial, because Uzbekistan is not a poor country, and if there is a will, there would be budget, including the ones that could be channeled through international organizations as well. Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, well, thank you, Khalida, Nigina, and Svetlana for being on the program. And a big thank you, as always, to Nathan Shoemaker, our Mejlis podcast producer in Washington, D.C. And a reminder, you can subscribe to the Mejlis podcast or the Central Asian Focus newsletter by visiting Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's website at rferl.org. Thanks, and we'll be back again soon. Bye-bye.